Right, what I want to talk about this morning is something that I haven't talked about very much before, and so you're going to have to bear with me on this one. And it's to do with, well, a pretty controversial subject, and that's the various different groups and infighting that goes on within them in YouTube and within gaming as well. And I want to address this because it's been something I've been sitting on for about a year now. I've actually made several videos on this subject and not posted them because of the contentious nature of it. But after watching some of the footage from Vidcon and also looking at some of the commentary that was made following what happened with Anita Sarkeesian and Sargon of Akkad, and then subsequently with Boogie2988, I felt like I had to say something. And some of you guys aren't going to like what I have to say because, as I say, it's a contentious issue. What happened, for those of you who don't know, is that during Vidcon, Anita Sarkeesian was on a panel and Sargon of Akkad turned up and sat in the front row with a whole group of people. And they were filming and, you know, sitting quietly and watching and listening to what Anita had to say. This is their side of the story. Anita's side of the story is that they sat there and they were there to intimidate her. And this led, whoever's side of the story you believe, to Anita blowing up and having a go at Sargon and, well, basically calling him a garbage human, which by anyone's standards isn't a particularly nice thing to say. And regardless of any provocation that she may have had, this is out of order to call somebody a garbage human, no matter what they might have done. And in this instance, regardless of Sargon of Akkad's motivations, he hadn't done very much, let's be honest. If you are somebody in the media and you are doing a conference or you're sitting on a panel, then in many instances you would expect to have a lot worse than Sargon subjected Anita to, if you can actually say that he subjected her to anything. I don't know his motivations. He may well have been there to wind her up. But whatever way you look at it, she shouldn't have said what she did. But that's not the crux of really what I want to talk about here. What I actually want to talk about is what happened subsequently. The following day, Anita was on a panel again, and this time the other significant person that was on the panel with her was Boogie2988. Boogie, I don't know if you guys know Boogie. If you don't know who Boogie is, you've probably been living under a rock for several years, but he's a very popular YouTuber, does stuff relating to games primarily, and talks about his issues with weight and so on and so forth. And on the panel, he talked about some of the issues he's had with people sending him death threats. And he made the point that this shouldn't be a gendered issue. This is an issue relating to everybody. You know, anyone who's in the public eye in any way, shape or form will suffer from this kind of abuse. And he draws the line at actual physical abuse and threats of physical abuse. And I would agree with him. You know, if someone comes on my channel and calls me a shithead or a dickhead or whatever, or even a garbage human, it's not going to really have that much of an effect on me. And so I think Boogie's right on this. But, of course, the problem is that Boogie is taking the middle ground here. The problem for him, I mean. Because what Boogie said was, after the conference, after the panel, Anita was quite confrontational with him initially, and then they sat down and they had a chat. And Boogie goes on to say that he thinks it's important to sit down and have a chat with people who you don't necessarily agree with. And he has said that he's spoken to Sargon in the past. And as an aside, I have to say that Liana Kay has put out a video this week, I think it is, in which she said that she asked for Sargon to apologise to her. I'm not sure of the specific details of that, but Sargon was big enough to do so. On that point, though, I think that both Sargon and Anita Sarkeesian should probably be big enough to stand up, you know, and make apologies to one another, because I think that it could be construed that Sargon was trying to wind up Anita, in which case he should be big enough to say, look, I'm sorry, I wasn't there to intimidate you. I don't know whether she perceived it that way. I'm inclined to doubt it, but he should give her the benefit of the doubt, as should we. I know people are going to come on here and say that, I shouldn't give her the benefit of the doubt because she's a terrible person and so on and so forth. But if you're going to do that, then how is that different to what Anita has done to Sargon? She called him a terrible human being, a garbage human. And, if you're going to come on and say that kind of thing to me, then you're doing exactly the same thing. And this is the problem. I think that Sargon should be big enough to say, look, I'm sorry if you felt like we were intimidating you. That wasn't our intention. He should be clear about that. But by the same token, she should be big enough to come out and be open and say, look, I should not have said what I said. Because she shouldn't. And no amount of prevarication and no amount of rationalizing the arguments is going to make what she said right. But let's bring this back to Boogie. Boogie has taken the middle ground here. And as I say, he's tried to say that he's spoken to both these people. And he said that the conversation that he had with Anita Sarkeesian after the fact was quite productive. And he felt like, although they went away not agreeing with one another, they did have, a conversation that gave them some common ground. And again, I know people aren't going to like that because there is a lot of hatred out there for Anita Sarkeesian. But, and I think this one's a really important point to make, I think that we need to be very, very careful about not attacking the person. Disagree with their arguments, vehemently disagree with their arguments if need be. Let's be honest, some of what Anita has said in the past and presumably what she will say in the future has been very much open to debate and question. And I certainly am not somebody who finds myself allied with her opinion very often. What she does with her group, with her people, is generate bad feeling towards anybody who disagrees with her. And that is one of my major bones of contention with Anita Sarkeesian. If I'm going to say that, though, about Anita Sarkeesian, I have to be clear that I don't condone that behaviour coming from the other side either. This whole identity politics thing where you belong to one group and you can't find common ground with the other is quite frankly bullshit. And this is why I was really pleased to see what Boogie2988 had to say. For me, Boogie's the only one who comes out of this smelling of roses. Because while, again, I don't agree with everything Boogie has said over the years, and even I was a little bit surprised when he was using terms like cis male and so on and so forth, I didn't find that upsetting though. And I don't understand why anyone would find that upsetting. As he said in his own videos, he was trying to find some common ground, some common language. If you don't make a step towards the person you disagree with, and they don't make a step towards you, if no one is prepared to walk into no man's land, then we'll never get anywhere. Fuck's sake, this is about YouTube, this is about gaming, and this is about media and entertainment. If we can't find common ground in these areas, where the fuck are we going to find it? At the end of the day, a lot of this stuff is utterly trivial. And all this infighting doesn't help anybody. And so, like I say, I think Boogie has walked right down the middle here, and I think he's done a very good job of doing so. You don't have to agree with Anita Sarkeesian. You don't have to agree with Sargon of Akkad. These guys are like lightning rods. They attract certain types of people who have extreme views and extreme mindsets as well. They have an almost totalitarian mindset whereby this is right, that's wrong, and there is no common ground. And the biggest problem I have with people like Anita and people like Sargon is they do act as lightning rods for these people. I know I keep going over this ground, but we have to. We have to try and find ways that we can communicate with each other. I'm open to anybody who wants to come to my channel, who in real life has a conversation with me and can find some common ground with me that we can discuss. I'm happy to butt heads with people all day long. But at the end of the day, if we're going to get on, we have to find common ground. My biggest issue with Anita Sarkeesian is she polarizes opinion. And she seems to willfully polarize opinion. And certainly Sargon does the same. And I think that people need to engage their critical faculty. Sargon is an internet celebrity in some respects, and so is Anita Sarkeesian. So is Boogie, for that matter. But just because these people are in the public eye, and just because they've made arguments that you may have agreed with in the past, doesn't mean that everything they say is, and excuse the term here, gospel. It's not. Nobody is infallible. Not a single person. Not you, not me, not Anita, not Sargon, not Boogie, or anyone else that you might follow on the internet or anywhere else. Don't allow this cult of personality to take over your mind like some virus and stop you thinking. Boogie said something that was really interesting at the end of one of his videos, and it was this, and I'm paraphrasing here. People tell me to pick a side. I am picking a side, my side. Do the same. Don't follow like a sheep. Pick a side. Pick your side. And if you go to someone's channel and you agree with them, fine. But if you disagree with them, also fine. Don't just go along with people because you've agreed with them in the past. Don't be a fucking sheep. Engage your brain. Don't ally yourself with right or left or whatever else it might be. Think for yourself. Try and assess each argument on its merits. I've been in a situation where I've had arguments with people running simultaneously on different sides of the argument. I've had people on the left that I'm arguing with, and at the same time I'm arguing about the same issue with people on the right. The person on the left thinks I'm from the right. The person from the right thinks I'm from the left. Because I'm asking questions and I'm asking them to justify their position. Asking someone to justify their position doesn't mean that you belong to another group. It just means you're asking them to clarify their position. I'm rambling on a bit here because this one is something that really gets my goat. I've come across this over the years. Every single group that I've been involved with, every group I've lurked around, trying to find out more about, ends up going through schisms and things because what happens is there is this orthodoxy. And if you don't adhere to the orthodoxy, then you're a pariah. At the risk of being blunt, fuck that. I'm not going to follow something just because it happens to fit with the orthodoxy. I'm going to think for myself. And if I'm wrong, then fine, I'm wrong. And somebody can come along and they can present me with some evidence that shows that I'm wrong. But don't just dismiss somebody out of hand because they come from the other side. That's just stupid. As I say, Anita and Sargon are lightning rods. Boogie, I have to say thank you for being somebody who has shown some sense in all this. And thank you for being true to yourself. As I have said before, I don't always agree with you. The fact of the matter is, I disagree with everybody I see out there at some point or another, and I hope people will disagree with me. And if you disagree with what I'm saying here, come and tell me and explain why. Because just shouting people down and calling them idiots doesn't achieve anything at all. It's bullshit. Have a conversation with people. Try and try again to find some common ground. Because if you try, I'll tell you now, if you try to find some common ground with people, you will. You will find some common ground. Joe Cox, the British MP who was killed by a far-right nut job, said that we have more in common them, we have differences. And she's absolutely right. Somebody killed her for having those viewpoints. How crazy, how utterly crazy is that? Don't be so much like Anita. Don't be quite so much like Sargon. Be a bit more like Boogie. Try and find the common ground. I'm not very good at it. I try. But if we all try, that's all we can do. Anyway, look, that's all I've got to say. I'm becoming a preacher, and I'm not one for preaching. So I'm going to go and get myself a cup of tea, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Sorry this one's a bit different than usual, but I had to get this one off my chest. As I say, I've done other videos in the past dealing with some of these issues, and I haven't uploaded them. I may even not upload this one. We'll have to wait and see. But as I say, going to grab a cup of tea, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Bye.